Welcome back to Season 3 of the FAQ Business Podcast. This episode today about starting a business was actually recorded back in mid to late 2022. Unfortunately, due to ill health, and you can hear it a little bit in this podcast episode, I unfortunately did have to put the podcast on hold early for Season 2. So I do apologize for that, but we are back and we are looking forward to getting into Season 3. And this season we will have a lot more guests, and we will also be operating on a basis of a fortnightly podcast episodes to start, and then we will move hopefully back to weekly. But we look forward to welcoming you back to the FAQ Business Podcast. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Today's episode of the FAQ Business Podcast is about the motivation to start a business and whether starting a business is right for you. I see people starting businesses all the time, some for really good reasons and some for reasons that are probably going to lead them into trouble. So let's look at some of the reasons why you might consider starting a business, or for those of you that are listening that are already in business, maybe this is for your teenagers or something to listen to. Welcome to the FAQ Business Podcast for business owners, covering 4 pillars: actionable education, inspiring leaders, businesses like you, and thought leadership where we challenge your thinking. Hosted by myself, Jane Tweedy, I'm founder and lead trainer of FAQ Business Training, where we want to avoid you getting ripped off or ripping yourself off. We'll feature an amazing diversity of guests with lots to educate and inspire you. Hi there, I'm Jane Tweedy and I'm the host of the FAQ Business Podcast. Today's episode is more about motivation for starting a business. So if you're already in business, this may be an episode more so for your family members or something that may be interested. Maybe they've had a rough few years and maybe they've thought about changing from a corporate job into a business themselves. Maybe your child is looking at starting a business. Because let's face it, it's interesting, isn't it, that when we go to school, there's very little talk about starting a business. It's very much you go to school, you do a job. And okay, there's some good reasons behind doing that. For instance, you learn on the job. So, you can learn something through school or university, but typically you're not learning really good on the job skills. So in my view, skills are more important than education and theory, okay? Because you can't use theory in the real world. You can apply it, test it, change it and adapt it, and then end up with some skills that are useful, but it's not really great by itself. You think about it. If you were going to learn to do something new, it's all very well to learn it in a textbook, but until you actually go do it, you don't really know. So, okay, maybe there's a reason why people go into jobs rather than starting a business. But some people definitely, I could see starting a business at a young age. And I have had some very young clients that have started businesses young and they have been very successful. So don't simply rule it out if your 15-year-old or something comes to you and says, hey, I want to start a business. At least hear them out, at least hear out that idea. But let's look at some of the motivations of why people want to start a business and why some of them might need a bit of rethinking. I found particularly during COVID, some people were sick of being made redundant. Some people were made redundant multiple times just before and during COVID. Maybe people are over dealing with workplace issues. They're over dealing with the pettiness and the infighting and the toxicity of some of those workplaces. And this workplace bullying, yep, totally get why they'd want to get out. They may have a values conflict with the business or the industry that they're in. For instance, I was in banking and investments. And as we all know, in Australia, they had a royal commission on this. And there were issues that came out that were certainly issues that were apparent in some of the businesses that I worked for. So, there is some values conflict there. And that's definitely one of the big benefits of having your own business, is the fact that you can instill your own values in your business. If something's really important to you, customers come first, money comes second, that is something you can put into practice. Whereas if you work for a business that does it the other way around, that might not work so well for you. There's people that just don't like to be told what to do. Now, in those circumstances, I would query you, because obviously your customers are telling you what to do anyway. So is it really going to get over your problem? Some people just don't like to work for others. And particularly if you've had a situation of something like an awful micromanager, which been there, done that. If you've had that type of micromanager, you might go, oh, I don't want to work for anyone again. I don't want someone every single day, every single minute, asking me what I'm doing and why. So a customer, because they're not there and in front of you, they may not be asking that question every single moment of the day. So yes, you might get that benefit by working in a business. Some people go for starting a business because they go, oh, I just can't get a job. Okay, I'm going to start a business. My problem with those people is that if you can't get a job, if you can't sell yourself to an employer, how are you going to sell yourself to clients? How are you going to sell yourself to referral partners? You still need to sell. So selling is an incredibly vital skill, regardless of what type of business you are doing, or whether even you're just a career person. You've got to be able to sell yourself, and not in a bad way. We're just talking about selling yourself for the position or selling yourself to a client. And another good reason though for starting a business is that you've always thought about it. It's been one of those things that's been pressing on your mind, and you've always thought, I really would love to start a business, but you just didn't quite have the money, the time, the courage, or whatever to get started. With changes, maybe you got made redundant, maybe you got a payout. Maybe that is giving you the opportunity to have a little bit of time to explore what's next for business. Now, for some people, of course, if they have been the main breadwinner in the family, it can really be a big concern over whether to take that plunge to go into their own business. And therefore, I see some people that'll go, okay, I want to go into my own business, but I'm very risk averse. I'm really scared of starting something new and having nothing behind me, no backing. So those people will often go down the path of something like a franchise. Now, you've got to look at a franchise realistically and go, is a franchise truly a business that you're running, or are you merely a pawn in the franchise? Are you really managing effectively an outlet in the franchise? So you think about McDonald's, right? And you go, right, I want to have some new beetroot burger. I'm going to start a beetroot burger for my branch of McDonald's. That ain't going to happen. McDonald's have a huge requirement to go through certain hurdles to have even a local burger in your establishment. So you've got to consider this, that you're not really running the show. You still have management or the franchise above you. So it's not truly running your own business. So do bear that in mind. You may treat it as a bit of a halfway house though. It's on your way of getting there. So one of the things I do suggest you do if you are considering starting a franchise as your first business opportunity is to make sure that if you're buying that franchise, that you are considering all the options as if you were starting a new business from scratch, because a lot of the times people skip some of the due diligence thinking that, oh, she'll be right, mate, because it's already established, it's already in place, it's turnkey. I literally just go in and it starts. That's actually not what happens all the time. So you think it's turnkey, but often it's not. So make sure you know exactly what you're getting in for if you are going down the franchise route, but also consider that exit strategy. What happens if I decide after a few years, you know what, I don't need this franchise. I'm paying a lot of fees for the franchise and not getting a lot of benefit. Or you don't feel as supported as you thought you were going to be. Or the leads that they promised you'd be getting are just not coming through. All of these things can lead you to go, franchise is not right for me. So make sure you're looking at the exit strategy of the franchise. What does that mean? Looking about whether you can sell that franchise to somebody else externally. Can you sell the franchise back to the franchisor? Can you just leave the franchise? Can you leave the franchise and keep your existing clients? There's lots of options for that exit strategy, but make sure you know what you can and can't do if you choose to exit. So starting a business, having that reason for starting the business, just be careful if it's one of these ones I've mentioned, things like that you can't get a job, you didn't like working with other people, you don't like being told what to do. Those reasons are not strong enough reasons to start a business. Starting a business is hard work. There is a lot of time and energy that goes into starting a business. You need to make sure your why is strong enough to keep you going. So look at the type of business you want to do. Make sure you do proper research before you get started. And I certainly do training and business planning and things to try and work out, have you got the right demand? Have you worked out what your pricing would be roughly and whether there'd be demand at that price point? Because it's all very well saying to someone, here's my free service because I'm trying to build up my portfolio as a photographer. And then you go to offer them a paid service and then nobody buys. So make sure that you are looking for your demand at the prices that people will need to pay. That's really important. So your purpose for starting a business needs to be more than some of these reasons I've mentioned previously. You really do need a solid why to fall back on. And a solid why, you can have two whys in your business. So one can be a personal motivating why, and the second one can be the external why. So the external why is the one that goes on the website. So for me, that's things like, I want to avoid people getting ripped off. Hugely passionate about that. So that's something I put on my website. Now, I had one client, for instance, that she said to me that she wanted to leave her husband. Clearly, that's not the one you stick on the website, especially if the husband doesn't know that's what your motivation is. As I said earlier, you've got to have sales skills. So if this is something you don't have, please make sure you get some sales skills. And we will cover some basic sales skills in upcoming podcasts and tea time tips, because sales skills are just so important. And they can be used in your everyday life. Even just negotiating what to have for dinner becomes a sales technique effectively. So sales is so important in life as well as in business. You have to be really willing to do the hard yards, and the yards are hard. And it's actually interesting. I'm watching The Block at the moment. Yes, I know there's issues with watching The Block, but anyway, there's a couple on The Block at the moment, and they are thinking they're so hard done by and feel like everyone's against them. For instance, everyone was sort of given a bit of a welfare check and they took it personally, like it was only them being asked. And I was like, no, everyone else got asked too. But the problem with them is they think they're working really, really hard. For a start, if they've seen any other series of The Block, it's going to get harder before it finishes. So really, they should be at the easier parts at the moment. But also, our levels of working hard are different. And I know that, in corporate, I used to think I was working really long hours. I'd be working till 10 o'clock at night sometimes. I'd be taking work home. I'd be thinking, so much work. And then in my own business, I'm working till blinking 2 o'clock in the morning and not getting paid for it. It's what hard work is very different. The perspective on it is very different. So what we think is hard may not actually be hard to someone else. But you have to have willingness to do genuinely the hard yards, to really bust your gut at times. I'm not saying you have to do that all the time. And that is not what we should be aiming for. We should be striving for a business that has the elusive work-life balance. Okay, I don't think you ever have a balance, but you should always be able to position your work and life so that you have time to enjoy your life. Because if you don't enjoy your life, what's the point? You need to be able to keep your wits about you. So when you go in and start a business, as soon as you register an ABN or anything like that, you immediately will start getting people trying to take advantage of you. It's very much like a wedding. You go into a venue and you say, right, I'm going to be having a wedding. Ka-ching, ka-ching. The prices go up, right? We all know this. The problem is when you're running a business is that people will do the same thing to you. Oh, a new business owner. They may not know anything. I'm going to try and sell them a domain for $99 when they could have bought it online for $20. This is the sort of thing you've got to be very careful of. So whenever you're sold anything, people come at you, just say, whoa, thank you for the information, and go away and independently look it up yourself. Because often you'll find, sure, having a domain in your business is a good idea. Doesn't mean you need to buy the domain from that person that sent you that letter. Absolutely not. So be very careful of what you're doing. Another big issue of moving, particularly from something like a corporate role or a tradie type role where you've had that boss standing over you telling you what to do all day, is you've got to have good self-discipline and motivation. You've got to be able to still perform even though nobody is telling you that you need to get something done. So you'll have client deadlines, and most people can work to those okay, but what about deadlines for you to grow your business? Deadlines for you to put your website up, deadlines for you to do a particular marketing activity, create a new course, create a new income stream. What are all those things? So do you have that self-motivation and that discipline to actually get that happening? If you don't, you're really going to struggle in business. So I mentioned before, if you are thinking of starting a business because you can't get a job, really think again. If you can't sell yourself to an employer, you're probably not using the right messaging. So how are you going to sell yourself to clients? Because it will be the same issue of not having the right messaging, not having that confidence to do it. So please make sure that, as I said earlier, you get sales skills if you need them. If I haven't put you off so far because you are looking at starting a business for the right reasons, then there's a couple of exercises that I really think would be a good idea for you to do. The first one is to look at things from your past, to reflect on your past. Always look back on what things you loved doing. In former roles or a former business, what did you love doing? What did you love about the people aspects? What did you love about the type of work? What about variety or consistency? Really think about those activities. So go back and do this as an exercise. What did you love? What were your favorite things from past roles and past businesses? Then do another exercise. What did you hate or really dislike, if you don't like that word hate, from past roles and businesses? Again, things like the people, the type of work. Was it variety or consistency? Because some people like me love variety and just can't stand the same monotonous thing all the time. Whereas some people, oh my gosh, they love that monotonous consistency. That's what they seek. What about your manager? What type of manager? So the thing is, by doing these two little exercises, it will help you whether you're going into another work role or going into a business role. So please make sure you do this. I see too many people jump from job to job without doing this type of thinking. So they go from a job, say, working at Macca's, but they didn't like, say, working with people at Macca's or working with customers. And then they go into a customer service call center role. Well, they're going to hate that too, because again, it's customer facing. Whereas if they decided that, they were doing a job and they don't like admin, then don't do another job with heaps of admin work. So really think about the type of work that you're doing, whether it's a business or a job, and make sure that the next role is doing more of what you love and less of what you hate. If you are not sure about what to do next at all, then another good exercise to do is a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And when we're looking at strengths, what we want to do is break it down to two areas. First one, soft skills. These are the things, the attributes that we have. The things like communication, empathy, that sort of thing, punctuality, those type of things. What are you great at? And then secondly, the skills that you are technically good at. Are you good with particular software? Are you good at a particular trade or a particular skill set? What are you good at? So really look at, and more so, what you're great at. We want to really emphasize the greatness rather than just, so-so. If you're really stuck after doing this, then there are tools available for you. There's the 16 personalities test, which you can certainly go and do. After looking at the skills that you're great at, you can also look at the things that you're weak at. So what are the soft skills and the technical skills that you're not great at? because we're all going to have some of those. So that will fill out your strengths and your weaknesses area. The idea then is you want to do a role that has more of your strengths, or you want to do in your business more things associated with your strengths, but the strengths that you love doing. So we don't want to market something that we don't want to do. We don't want to apply for a job doing something we don't want to do just because we're good at it. Really focus on doing what you love, but also what you're good at. Combine the two together, and we're starting to get into a good zone. It's part of the Ikigai process, which I talked about in another podcast. Reaching Ikigai is when we get to a place where we love what we do, we're good at it, we can get paid for it, most importantly, and it's what the world needs from us. These are amazing. If we can get all 4 areas, we have a state of Ikigai, a reason for being. You've got to think about that. That's hugely powerful. But if you can't do this, if you can't find anything, then go and look at something like 16 personalities. You can do a free test on that, and it will give you some insights on the type of things you want to do. If you want to do something more robust, then something like the HBDI profiles that I do, Herman Brain Dominance Instrument profiles and debriefs, we can give you an assessment through that, and that also has an area that is for that type of thing, for career or business ideas. So reach out if you need anything in that space. The thing to consider in starting a business from scratch is how you're going to establish your credibility when you get started. Because you're going to start a business fresh. You've got 0 years in business. That's not going to look great to people, right? So how are you going to build your portfolio? How are you going to build your client base? Are you going to start by offering some freebies or some test clients first and get them to give you recommendations in return? You can't demand a 5-star recommendation, by the way. You can certainly ask for a recommendation, and they should be stating in the recommendation that they did receive free services. But, you can use those as test cases. So we like to see social proof. So get clients to give you testimonials. Get clients to leave you reviews. So as you build that up, it will help you. Also consider whether you need to do any studying or if you need to obtain any credentials. For instance, there's so many coaches out there, right? Coaches, business coaches, executive coaches galore. And that was why I decided to get my qualification with the International Coaching Federation, my professional certified coach. The reason I got that is because it gives me that level of credibility. I have an organization that has tested me. It has made me go through the knowledge test. It's made me go through 500 hours of coaching. I've had to go through 10 hours of mentor coaching. I've had to go through 125 hours of training. All that stuff gives some kudos and some credibility to what I do. So really think about whether you need to do that. Have you already got that because you are currently a lawyer and you have a law degree and all that sort of stuff? And remember that past experience counts for something. So when you start on day 1, you don't need to say on your website, we opened today, I have 0 experience. No, you have 10 years worth of legal experience. So make sure you put those years of background experience in there as well. Don't be afraid of selling that type of message. If you were doing work for other people, say you're an interior designer and you were working for somebody else, or maybe you were a tradie and you were doing construction work for somebody else, only use those pictures and things of that site if you have permission to do so. I have seen some big disputes with businesses where a business who was the lead contractor has got very offside by a subcontractor putting up pictures without taking them and stuff. So be very clear if you are going to put pictures up that are someone else's work, if you like, because it might confuse the client as well. So be very careful about what you're putting up and only put stuff up that you have permission to do. But having those things would give you some credibility. So if you can get some of that from a previous employer, please do so. But make sure you have permission to do it. So all that's going to help you to establish credibility so that when you get started, you're ready to go. So today's session is purely about getting that background right. Are you ready to start a business? Are you doing it for the right reasons? And the right reasons are really because you've always wanted to be a small business owner. You love the idea of working for yourself, of having a business where your values are important, where you have flexibility. You won't work shorter hours, but you'll have flexibility. Over the years, you might be able to have shorter hours, but certainly not at the start. But you will have flexibility. Do you like the ability to control things a little bit more, to make decisions, to have more of that side of it, to be in charge? That might be a good thing. But remember, ultimately, clients are kind of in charge of us anyway. So you lose a little bit there. Really think about your why, whether it's a public why and a personal why, or they could be one and the same. But make sure your why is strong enough that you're going to stick it out if times get tough. Make sure you understand that you're going to have to put in hard work, and understand that the level of hard work required may be way harder than anything you've ever done before, because you don't really know what it's going to be like until you get started. But the last thing I would like to say about getting started in business, if you're thinking, I still think I want to do this. Awesome. I love small business owners. I love small business. I love the leap that I made myself. However, doing it by yourself is doing it the hard way, harder than needed. So why don't you reach out and use all the support out there? There's plenty of support out there. Doesn't matter which country you're in. Go type up, starting a business in your location and see what things are available in your area. Take advantage of them, but also take advantages of services like me. So I have my business, FAQ Business Training. FAQ Business Training provides an online school, a membership, a podcast, tea time tips, short learnings. It provides a variety of trainings and things that are completely free, as well as trainings that are paid. But get trained, learn what you need to learn, and make sure that you're not getting ripped off. Okay, because I hate it when people get ripped off. So make sure you always learn enough to either outsource it confidently because you know what questions to ask and how to monitor, or do it yourself. And that's where you can come to somebody like me at FAQ Business Training, and we will help you get along the way. We can also do coaching and advice. So they kind of can all get merged into one session. So as we go along, we see where your issues are. So if it turns out that your issue is not about selling, it's not about the techniques of selling, but it's about the fact that you don't believe in yourself, then it switches to a coaching session. We address that issue first, then we jump back to a session about how to sell. But if you're not ready to sell because you don't have that self-belief, you're going to struggle. I just want to reiterate, today's session was about that motivation for starting a business, making sure that you are ready to start a business. And if you are ready, I'd love to have a chat to you. Reach out to me. My name is Jane Tweedy. I'm the host of the FAQ Business Podcast, and I also run FAQ Business Training and FAQ Business Consulting. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the FAQ Business Podcast. Available on all good podcast services, you can subscribe today via faqbusinesspodcast.com.au. Subscribe, follow, share, and where able, review our podcast. We look forward to inspiring and educating you again on the FAQ Business Podcast.